Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to this preview of Saturday's Busanda Stakes taking place at Aqueduct. This is, of course, a Kentucky Oaks prep race for those horses up in New York, so you definitely want to stick around and check this one out, as that Busanda is part of a very exciting late pick 5 sequence at Aqueduct on Saturday. Now, before we get into this Oaks prep preview, I want to remind you to press that like and subscribe button on NYRA Bets YouTube today. We have a lot of great content up on the channel, even more coming in the days to follow, but we already have the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks, the road to those two races. Myself and my colleague Kaylee Shapiro, that episode is already up on the YouTube channel. You can check that out. Also have some great stuff coming up around LeCompte Day at the fairgrounds. So that's going to be really exciting. Going to be joined by fairgrounds announcer John Dooley. And so definitely want to check that out. But we also have some NYRA Bets 2024 awards that we're giving out as well. Some fun videos there. Every single week, you got race previews, full card analyses, horse racing news, updates, Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Oaks preps, and so much more. So press that subscribe button, completely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel. All right, well, like I said, we're talking about the Busanda Stakes this week, taking place at Aqueduct on Saturday, going 1 1/8 miles for those 3-year-old fillies seeking entry into the Kentucky Oaks. And it's going to be a fun sequence to talk about. It's always fun to see this big stamina test, in particular on Saturday, going 1 1/8 miles, the longest any of these horses have run to this point. So you really do get a sense of who is going to be able to handle not just 2 turns, but 9 furlongs, which is really sometimes a whole other thing to deal with when you're looking at these young 3-year-old fillies. But let's dive into this 9-horse field, talk a little bit more about it. And you'll see that there are 2 horses with asterisks next to their names. That is because both Bless the Broken and Carmen's Candy Jar are both cross-entered. Now, you might know very well by the time you're watching this video on Friday if Carmen's Candy Jar is going to run. She is cross-entered in a state-bred optional claiming race on Friday at Aqueduct. Obviously, if she's entered there, then she is not going to be in the stakes race on Saturday. It's interesting. I don't know if she's really open company graded stakes or Oaks caliber. I think the other race that she's entered on Friday, she fits much better. She's a 7-2 second choice in that race. So I imagine Todd Pletcher is going to move her there, but you never know. So it's possible this 9-horse field may become 8, may become 7, depending on whether or not those 2 horses go to their respective races prior to the race on Saturday. Now, the 9-horse field has a couple of standout horses that are really interesting to talk about. We'll start with Ramify, who is your morning line favorite for trainer Chad Brown. And this horse coming off of a debut maiden victory in which the horse fell very far behind early, made up a lot of ground, was extremely green under the ride of Flavian Pratt, and was able to get up in time and pass My Sharona, who we're going to talk about as well, who's in this race. Now, it's an interesting pedigree and one we've actually seen have a lot of success. Munnings up top out of a Tappet mare. If I'm not mistaken, that's the same pedigree that Poster, who won one of the Kentucky Derby prep races up here in New York, had for Owen Hardy. That Munnings influence up top, usually very good on sprinting. The Tappet influence underneath, much more focused on stamina. So that combination of speed and stamina is usually a good thing to see. And Ramify, again, coming that off the pace running style, going the 1-turn mile, now stretching out to 2 turns for the first time. I think one of the interesting things about Ramify, a couple of things. One, Jose Lezcano, the jockey, is up on the mount. That's a little bit interesting to me. Chad Brown usually would go to a jockey like Manny Franco in this particular spot. Well, Manny is riding the number 1 horse, Sharp Smile, for trainer Brad Cox. Now, on its face, that's not that surprising. Manny Franco is Brad Cox's number 1 guy up here over the winter. But usually when there is a Cox and a Brown entry, usually Manny ends up on the Brown entry and will leave the Cox horse. I'm not that big of a fan of Sharp Smile in this race. I know the horse is 6-1, but buyer speed figures are pretty light and hasn't really shown that next move forward. Won over a sloppy track. That's always a little bit of a question mark for me. So I'm just not really sold on this horse. So it's interesting that maybe Manny had a choice. Maybe Chad wanted to go in a slightly different direction, but obviously Ramify not going to have Flavian Pratt aboard. We'll have Jose Lezcano up, who is more than capable in this particular spot. Actually won the Gazelle last year on Where's My Ring. So, obviously has a lot of experience with this type of race in terms of an Oaks prep race. But the other thing that's concerning about this horse is just came from well off the pace. Now, doing it against maidens is one thing, and doing it against a 5-horse field is something else. Now you're going against a 9-horse field, might shrink a little bit depending on where some of the other horses go, but you're facing much tougher competition now. And whether or not you can get away with that sort of running style or that greenness that she showed is a bit of a question mark. So I do think that there's some things to clean up there on Ramify at 5-2. Is this horse likely winner of this race? Absolutely. But I think there's reason to play against this horse in some ways because of that running style, because of, I'll just say, the curious jockey decisions here. Not that that takes anything away from Lizcano, but it's just interesting to note. And the fact that it was, like I said, a 5-horse field that she beat in debut, now facing tougher and facing more, could be a couple of hurdles for her to overcome in this spot. Now, as a result, I really like the Wesley Ward horse Running Away. This is a horse that has only ever run 2 turns, which is a little fascinating. This is a horse that ran in debut at Saratoga against Virgin Colada. Well, that horse went on to run in the Breeders' Cup. So ran and barely, by the way, you should say Running Away barely lost to Virgin Colada that day. And so run against good competition. Next time out, went down to Keeneland and ran 3rd by a neck that day against really good maiden special weight company. But then Wesley Ward does something a little bit different. Those first 2 races were on the turf, a mile and a 16th and a mile respectively. This is a horse that's a front runner, faded a little bit late both those times. Now goes to the dirt and perks up. Not only goes to the front and wins by 5 lengths while going a mile and a 16th at Churchill Downs. So does the 2 turns at Churchill. Johnny Velasquez aboard that day, was your even money favorite, still won very, very impressively. Now you're drawing outside. There is other speed to contend with. A horse like Bernie and the Rose is certainly a fast horse. My Sharona, the Ray Handled horse, has some good early speed as well. So even Manny's horse on the inside, Sharp Smile, has some good speed. So there might be some other speed to contend with. I would imagine jockey Sahin Savachi from Woodbine, who is a new face down here at Aqueduct, hence why I'm struggling with his name. But I would imagine that he's going to be rather aggressive, getting this horse out and getting this horse into a good position. And so does the horse need the lead? Maybe, maybe not. The horse has had outstanding early speed and kind of just gotten to the front without any issues, and has usually set pretty honest fractions when running up front, even when that horse has been able to get an easy lead, as it was on the turf a couple of times. But last time it was a little bit of a contested lead and was able to not only hang on, but really pull away late. So I love that this horse, out of all of them, has passed the 2-turn test. I know this horse can do 2 turns. I'm not worried about the mile and an 1/8 with Running Away. Sired by Gunrunner out of an Unbridled Song mare. Again, Gunrunner, it's not a Union Rag situation. And those of you who follow me on Twitter know that I have a deep loathing for people who run Union Rags horses on turf or synthetic, because they're absolutely awful on that surface. Listen, Gunrunner is kind of fine, is average on synthetic. You don't see many of his horses, his progeny, run on synthetic, but it's a below average turf sire. He is an outstanding dirt sire. Okay, so his dirt route win rate for his offspring is 18%. His turf route win rate for his offspring is 9%. So getting this horse onto the right surface, I would argue, was kind of a critical step in this way. The buyer speed figures perk up. I think you're going to see another increase second time on the surface. I love the foundation this horse has with 3 2-turn races under her belt. So that's going to be my top choice. Now, a horse that I think provides some outstanding value is a horse like the number 6 Ruth at 8-1 for trainer Todd Pletcher. This is another horse that should appreciate more distance, coming out of a 1-turn debut maiden breaking race at Gulfstream Park, going a mile, but sired by Uncle Mo out of a Bernardini mare. There's plenty to like there in terms of the overall quality of the pedigree and what this says about how the horse can handle a longer distance. Pletcher, interestingly enough, this horse wins down at Gulfstream Park in December. Todd has been training this horse down at Palm Bay Downs, I should say. And what do we suddenly see? Now he's shipping this horse up here for this race. To me, that says a lot. that this horse coming out of a debut maiden victory is now on the Oaks Trail. Pletcher is as good as any trainer at spotting these horses in effective places so they can maximize their point total. And while you might look at the maiden special weight $40,000 race that she exited and go, well, there wasn't much there. You're right. There wasn't a lot there. It was a 7-horse field, and the buyer speed figure came back light in terms of a 57, would have to improve dramatically. Well, what gave me promise was that the second place horse that day, who lost to Ruth by about a length and a quarter, came back and ran a 69 buyer speed figure, a 14-point increase the next time out against Maiden Special Weight Company at Tampa Bay Downs. So I was pleased to see a runner coming out of that race really jumped up in terms of the speed figures. I think that race might have just been clocked a little bit slow, and maybe those speed figures are not going to come back and hold up particularly well. This horse has been training nicely down in South Florida. 48-3 bullet work, 2 back, 48-4 work leading up to this race, just like the way Pletcher has this one pointed. And because that buyer speed figure is a little light, I think people are going to be looking another direction. One of the things we always see is, and Andy Serling talks about this, Maggie Wolfendale, Acacia Clement, they all talk about this, and I do too, which is horses, particularly fillies, that will really debut with an eye-popping speed figure typically regress second time out. I think the opposite might not be as true as often, but it does not surprise me when I see it, which is sometimes you will see a slow buyer speed figure in debut, and then suddenly there's a 15, a 20-point increase to the next race because, well, it turns out maybe that first race wasn't as slow as we thought it was. 2-year-old races, even later in the season, are notoriously difficult and maybe a little bit more unreliable with regards to getting that accurate speed figure. So, like I said, I just think I'm willing to take a chance with that horse, and I think she's got some talent there and the ability to perhaps move forward at a nice price at 8-1. Now, I mentioned my Sharona for Ray Handel, and I like Ray as a trainer quite a bit. It's got Romero Mirage up on the mountain. I think Romero's been doing an outstanding job jockeying up here at Aqueduct and really making a name for himself up here in the fall and the winter. I think some of the rides he's been giving have been really outstanding. This horse has come in second both times in both starts and is still a maiden. Went 6.5 in debut, finished second by a half length, went a mile second time out, finished second to Ramify by a half a length. Here's what concerned me about both those races. I think the horse might be a hanger. And I say that because the horse in debut really looked like she was going to go by Beauty Reigns at one point, and Beauty Reigns just kind of like kept finding more and kicking on. And my Sharona wasn't fading, but wasn't really passing. You know, it wasn't like, oh, she just is all out and she's empty and she's going to pack it in. She was still trying really hard, and she was still running well towards the end of the race, but just didn't want to run by her. And then suddenly the gallop out looked a little bit stronger. Same thing was true with Ramify, where Ramify gets by her, and you think, oh, Ramify's going to blow by. And my Sharona kind of re-engages a little bit, but not the sort of like Dornick-esque re-engagement where you go past. More of a re-engagement of, okay, I'm now re-interested in this race. Now that another horse has kind of run by me, I'm going to run with my friend rather than going past my friend. So I think that's a little bit of an issue with my Sharona. And again, a horse that likes to sit close to the pace, has good tactical speed, does not need the lead. There are definitely things to like about this horse. Sired by Not This Time. Class included the Dam. Was a pretty good horse in her own right, though has not necessarily turned out a lot of winners. Though to be fair, she also hasn't been paired up with a sire quite like Not This Time. She's had 2 Star Guitars and a Liam's Map to this point, so that have raced. So getting Not This Time is a pretty big upgrade from a sire standpoint for her. So I think this one, listen, the 2 speed figures, 72, 75, they match up pretty well, and would not be shocked if this one won, but I think this is a tough one to include on your ticket, considering this one burned money last time as a 3-4 favorite, finishing second, showing maybe a little bit of that propensity to hang a little bit and not really show the urgency to get by the competition coming towards down to the wire. Now, you look at some other horses in this race, certainly Brad Cox has to be taken seriously with the number 1, Sharp Smile. I mentioned this horse earlier. I'm not the biggest fan of this one. Yes, you got Manny Franco up. You have the inside rail, so you're going to save a lot of ground. The horse won over a sloppy track. There is some weather forecasted in the New York area on Saturday, but I do not anticipate it to be too overwhelming. So particularly by race time. And so I'm not really kind of counting on that. The other thing is one over a sloppy track, but the buyer speed figure stayed the exact same. This horse has run 65, 65, 66. You've not seen that progression that you normally see out of Brad Cox runners. Now, the horse has been training well, no two ways about it. You get Practical Joke up top, who is a sire that I genuinely like. And like I said, Manny is as good as anybody this time of year up here. But still, this one, I just can't really get there at 6-1. Now you give me 10-1 on this horse floats up. Maybe I'm a little bit more interested, but the fact it's Cox and Franco means that you're not going to get that sort of a price. I doubt this horse floats up much more. Bless the Broken. We'll see if this one runs or whether or not this one runs down at Fairgrounds in the Silver Bullet Day. 15-1 up here and was thoroughly dominated in the Demoiselle. That dominant victory at Evangeline Downs against much lesser competition seems like ages ago. So I'm not 100% sure this one is worthy of, even long shot consideration. As I mentioned, Carmen's Candy Jar, I feel like is a little bit more of a sprinter. And then Bernie and the Rose, 12-1 for Dominant Chatino with Katie Davis aboard. This one has good speed and certainly looked good last time out, winning against optional claiming State Bred Company and has beaten winners before. So that's always promising to see. But again, is going to have to contend with some other speed, though does have the ability to rate, as we saw the horse doing that two-back, breaking its maiden going 7 furlongs. The pedigree is not overwhelming. You have Accelerate out of a Freud mare, but, you never know. I mean, these things can kind of play out a few different ways, and this one is the half to Bernie's Takes Charge, who's a pretty nice horse and who has dabbled in those stakes races and is a stakes placed horse in the New York bred circuit. I think this horse is a nice New York bred. I don't know if this horse is quite good enough for this level of competition against Open Company and would have to kind of move forward on the speed figures a little bit, very comparable to a horse like the Cox runner, Sharp Smile. So some thoughts there on the Busanda Stakes for Saturday. But listen, folks, appreciate everybody tuning in and checking out this Busanda preview. Make sure to check out our Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks video. Make sure to check out our 2024 NYRA Bets Awards video. That's a really fun one with myself and Kaylee Shapiro. And then we're going to have John Dooley on to talk about the LeCompte and the Louisiana Stakes. That's going to be a lot of fun, as well as the Silver Bullet Day. So a big day down at Fairgrounds. Then I'll be doing Capping the Card, probably on the Fairgrounds as well. 12 race card, that's going to be out as well. So a lot of content here for you on NYRA Bets. So make sure to press that subscribe button today. All right, friends, that'll do it for me. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.